Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's town hall. Today we're going to explore the conversation of back to school in the time of COVID-19. I'm really grateful for those of you that volunteered, were willing to accept the invitation to be our guests today, and I'm grateful that you've made time for this and are willing to share with us today as we move through this. Let me begin by thanking the Enoch for Congress campaign for sponsoring today's call, and I'll begin with some introductions. My name is Elaine Hansen, and I am the moderator for today's town hall. I'm also the president of Hansen Resource Development. It's a consulting business that designs workshops, coaches, hosts and facilitates conversations that matter, I hope. And also, I spend my time trying to build community and connections wherever I show up in the world. And with that, I'd like to introduce two candidates that are running for office in November. The first is Dr. Vanessa Enoch. She's also the host for today's town hall. She is the founder and CEO of the Cultural Impact LLC, a business management consulting firm based in Cincinnati, Ohio. Her main focus is public policy and social change. She is a candidate for Congress in the 8th District of Ohio. Welcome, Vanessa. And our other guests will be Michelle Novak. Michelle's a longtime community advocate, a current member of the Middletown City School District Board of Education, and a mother of 4 children, and she is running for state representative in Ohio's 53rd House. And Vanessa, I'll turn the mic over to you.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Again, my name is Dr. Vanessa Enoch. I am the Democratic nominee for the U.S. House of Representatives. I'd like to first off, thank our guest for being here. Thank you for being willing to have this conversation today. As you can see, we have a number of guests. We have some educators with us today, as well as some students, and Michelle, in fact, represents the board in Middletown, Ohio, where she's running for state rep. But I thought this conversation was very important to have today because policy drives much of what happens to us and for us. And sometimes it's important to make sure that we stop and listen to the people who are most impacted, which is why we have the young people here today. We also have teachers here today. It's important to hear from those voices because policy impacts all of us. And if we don't stop and listen to the people most impacted, oftentimes we don't come up with the best ideas or the best solutions. So as a nominee for the U.S. House of Representatives, I'm running in the federal space to ensure that public policy happens well for all of us at the federal level, but Michelle is running at the state level. We wanted to have this conversation, this joint conversation, because we understand that it's important to ensure that good public policy is made at the federal level as well as the state level and everything in between. So thanks again for everyone being here. I look forward to this conversation because I have a student in college who I sent back to school, and I was very nervous this year to send her back with COVID-19. And we want to hear some of the experiences of the individuals who are here and some of the things that may be being done to protect our students as we move forward in this year. And then also some of the things that we need to be considering as legislators going forward. So thanks again for all of you being here. And I'm going to turn the mic over to Michelle, who is running for state rep. Michelle.
Vanessa, Congresswoman Enoch. I like the way that sounds. And thank you, Elaine, for organizing this. And thanks also to all of the panelists. I'm so happy to be a part of this. I think that we don't have enough platforms like this. And like Dr. Enoch had mentioned, we really need to hear people's voices. And especially now more than ever with the pandemic, because we have to find and discover new ways that we can communicate. We're not just running into each other in town anymore or at the schools. And that's where a lot of our communications were happening, our after school activities. And now we have to look at these new platforms. And especially now with all the stress that everybody is under every day from all of these changes happening in our lives. So I just wanted to let you know a little bit about me. I have a background in corporate finance and my master's in public administration. I studied international comparative politics during my graduate school. And what I've done with those degrees is I've really used them to advocate in my community, advocate for my children, advocate for really a lot of different people through my experience as a grant writer and a consultant with several nonprofit organizations. And that's all I really intended to do with that. But more and more, I started to see all of these obstacles that were put in front of us. And I was really supporting my children, my 4 children who were in public schools when I first ran for the school board by becoming more involved in the district and using my background and experience to try to make a difference for the people in my community. I've always supported public schools. Although my children have gone to private schools, they've gone to charter schools, and they've gone to public school. So I have experience in different school systems. But whenever a levy came on the ballot, I was voting for it because I understand that our schools, our public schools, have an impact on everybody else and everything else in our community, and the importance of supporting public schools. As a member on the school board in Middletown, I started to realize that some of those things I was studying in school about corruption and how things work, they're real. Those things are real and they're happening. And it's different though when you're studying it in school and when you're seeing the impact of those things on your own children and on your family. And I got to a point when I didn't feel like I had enough of a voice on policy as a school board member. I did locally, but there were so many obstacles that were being put in our way from the state level. And that's what motivated me initially to run for state representative. And Ohio's 53rd House District includes Middletown, Monroe, Trenton, Oxford, and the adjoining townships. And my district overlaps, or actually Vanessa Enoch's district overlaps all of my district. So thank you again for having me here today. I love talking about the schools, and I'm excited to have this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, let me introduce our other guest, and I'll start with Benita Mudd. Benita is a retired teacher with more than 30 years experience in the classroom. She is a board member for the Butler County Educational Service Center, and her interest and passion for the educational systems and the future of all children has not been diminished over the years. She is a real advocate for better education for all our children. Additionally, next I'd like to introduce Joanna Linser. She goes by Joey. Joey is a stay-at-home mom with 9 children. Their ages are 1 through 12. And her 7 oldest children attend Cincinnati public schools. This year they're doing it virtually. And then I'd like to introduce her daughter, Elaine Hansen. Adelaide is a 7th grader at Walnut Hills High School. And before the pandemic, she was active in competitive swimming, musical theater, basketball, and violin. And hopefully soon she'll be back in those sports and activities again. Our next guest is Paris Morgan. Paris is a public school kindergarten teacher and is certified to teach kindergarten through 3rd grade. She also coaches dance for grades 2 through 6. She is currently in school working toward her master's degree in educational leadership. And then our other final guest is Jeffrey Demaree. Did I say it right, Jeff? He'll correct me later. Jeff teaches 8th grade history in a Title I urban public school. He serves on the steering committee for developing a safe route to school program. And before becoming a teacher, he worked as an entrepreneur, a business coach, a social worker, and a saxophonist. I'll have to hear more about that later. So thank you all, and welcome, and thanks for joining this conversation today. As we move into the conversations, I just want to say a few things about this process. When I ask you a question, if you don't want to answer it or you're not ready to answer it, passing is always allowed in this space. Instead, we want you to respond when you feel moved to speak, and we'll spend about 10 to 15 minutes per conversation, and there will always be time at the end of the conversations for Q&A for the audience that have things that come up. So let me begin by offering this question to our guest, and please respond when you feel ready to answer this question. Why was it important for you to accept our invitation to join this conversation today? Who would like to go first? Benita.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Enoch, for inviting me today. Counted a privilege and an honor. And I think the reason why it was really important for me to be part of this conversation is that the entire world has changed. And our children are experiencing something that they've never experienced, along with their families. And as young people, they depend on those who have the wisdom and the knowledge to help them navigate through life. Mm-hmm. So it was really important for me to join this conversation based on that, and just to experience an opportunity to be with others who care about the same types of things.
Thank you. Thank you. And who would like to go next? There we go. Paris, can you unmute yourself? There you go.
Oh, wait.
Try again.
I feel like kindergarten. I do that all day long. Unmute, mute, unmute, mute. But along with Miss Benita, thank you for inviting me today. But I agree with her. I've had some strong sentiments during this time, and I found myself oftentimes silent just because kindergarten is a different world, and sometimes I think kindergarten does get looked over. So I think it was important for me to join today just to provide a perspective from a kindergarten teacher, and just knowing that that's their first year of learning and how important that is. And now, because of our pandemic, that learning is totally different. So that's why it was important for me to join today, just to provide that perspective, actually being in the classroom and working with students, just knowing the traditional way that we've done things, and now finding a totally different way to do things.
Thank you. Thank you, Benita. And there we go, Michelle.
That was Paris.
I know Michelle has raised her hand. Did she want to?
I know, we're raising hands, so I'm following the rules. So it was important for me to become a part of this conversation, or to be a part of this conversation today as well, for a lot of the reasons that Benita already said. There's a lot of people depending on us to make decisions, and to make good decisions. And we're also depending on people to give us feedback and communicate with us, because this is something that we have never experienced before. There's no precedent set for it. And we all come with our own experiences, and we can't represent everybody who's out there. And that's why this communication and so many different forms of communication is so important for us. And so I hope to open up channels of communication in different school districts, because we all want this to be successful. We all want our children to be successful. And we know that there's a lot of challenges here. So we're all here to serve the children in our school districts. And in order to do that, we have to be partners. And we have to partner with parents, with teachers, with administrators, and with our elected representatives for this to really be successful.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're We have two teams that haven't spoken yet. There we go. Joey, let's get you unmiked. There you go.
There. Hi. Yeah, no, it was really important to me to be a part of this discussion today because a lot of these discussions, they happen in, very big rooms with a lot of experts and everything. But this is a unique situation where it's really the parents and the families who are living through it. And that's a completely new thing for all of us. Natalie, what about you?
I wanted to be a part of this conversation today because I feel like so far in this world that we're living in right now, a lot of the conversations have been between the adults and the parents, and not a lot of people have gotten a student point of view yet, and I'm excited to give my point of view on the situation.
Thank you. Thank you. And Jeff, do you have anything to add?
Sure. I'm here to represent the voice of my 150 students who aren't.
Oh, we lost you a little bit. You froze. We were a little worried about to find
representative of kind of what we're experiencing. So yeah, I'm here to try to give a reflection of their experiences if possible. I'm communicating with you on the Wi-Fi from the school, and it's not behaving very well so far. So we'll see if it allows me to contribute later on.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate all your responses. Was there anything anyone wanted to add to that before we move to the next question? Are we good? Okay. So as you reflect on how school has begun, what is the crossroads you face around this beginning? Anybody? Michelle?
So many, but I find that a lot of them are all stemming from our communication, because we have an enormous amount of stress that everyone is feeling right now. Mm-hmm. And now we have to communicate in a different way, and people aren't really sure which channels to go through and how to navigate their communication if they have an issue. And then, sometimes people feel ignored. And when all of these factors are coming into play, then we start to get afraid, and we start to come up with our own conclusions about things. And, and I know that, we've had excellent communication in our school district, but when that has broken down, it's undermined everything else that we've done. Mm. And so we had to get back into that and fix those issues. So that is really the crossroads that we've been facing as we're making decisions, because like Joanna said, it's having such a huge impact on people's lives right now. The decisions that their local school boards are making, their state representatives are making, and their Congress people are making. So there's a lot of people responsible for what's happening in our lives right now.
Right.
So, yeah. But again, I'm going to be stressing this whole time probably that communication and knowing what channels to use and how to advocate for ourselves.
Thank you. Yeah, I think transparency and good communication skills will help smooth some of the bumps, I think, as we go through this. Does anyone else would like to respond to the question on how this school year has begun for you and what have been some of the crossroads you've had to face in moving through it? So.
I would like to address the biggest crossroad, I believe, is fear of the unknown, fear of the what ifs, fear of having the virus attack one's being and their family members, and just the fear of the unknown. And I believe that this time, many people may feel this anxiety and stress that may have even caused some mental and sociological issues with their being. And unless we communicate how we're feeling with those that are in our family, starting with those that are in our homes, and then reaching out to those who we have not been able to see across the country, then it gives us that outlet to reduce that stress level, to reduce the fears, to reduce the anxieties that one may have.
Thank you. Thank you. Jeff.
Welcome.
Hi. Yeah, hopefully I resolve some of the tech issues. The local charity used to be called 1 in 5, and now it would be more apt to rename it 1 in 3. So that's the actual scope of the impact that the epidemic has had on our mental health. It's now 1 out of every 3 Americans will experience some type of incident. One of the roles that I play at our school that I'm quite proud of is I am the lead for a group called Bring Change to Mind, which is a in-school organization which focuses on eradicating the stigma around mental health issues so that young people can actively seek help when they want to. I know that there is a branch at Walnut, and they're springing up everywhere because there's a need for it, to be completely honest. One of the observations that I've made so far this school year, really starting in the summer, is that we used to, if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that famous pyramid that most of us have seen and are familiar with, right? It's no longer a theory, I think it's a law. We found out that this is actually fundamentally true. And that unless you have that bottom fundamental rung of the pyramid stable and safe, then you can't work on issues like self-esteem and worrying about what amendment is associated with the Constitution in my class, for example. You have to have those bottom rungs of the pyramid solid and stable before you can worry about anything else. I think that's just proven to be true.
Would you, just for the audience, state what the foundation pieces are of that pyramid?
Sure. It's if you're not familiar with this famous social psychologist, this researcher he was actually from Eastern Europe, and he worked mostly in 1950s, 1960s, a guy named Abraham Maslow. But he came up with this idea that your well-being is based on something that looks like a pyramid, and that unless you have the bottom parts of the pyramid taken care of, you can't build on top of it. And the very bottom rungs of the pyramid are things like physiological well-being, making sure you have a roof over your head, making sure you're safe, making sure you're not worried about family members catching a disease and getting ill, making sure you have enough to eat, making sure you're warm, you have shelter, these type of basic ideas. So the whole idea is that if those things are in jeopardy, then everything else above that pyramid's in jeopardy too, like your mental health and how you feel about yourself and your relationships and your education too.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think we forget that all these children and the adults in their life are showing up with concerns on that lower rung of the pyramid, the foundational pieces, and how critical that is. Is there anyone else that would like to respond to the question before I move us to the next one? Oh, Joanna, Joey. I'll try to call you Joey.
Yeah. No, just like adding on to what Jeff had said there, because there is so much stress in the homes right now, and the kids are feeling all of that too. I think a lot of what we're seeing right now is the kids are really holding it together while they're in these, their Google Meets or their Zoom meetings or whatever it is. And then they walk away and mom and dad are the ones there to sort of clean up the mess. That's when the tears start falling. That's when the stress really comes out. So, we're all getting these peeks in at the children and seeing how they're doing. And it looks great because they're able to, pull it together, and they know how, because kids are good at that. But there's a lot of mess to clean up on the other end, a lot of tears and a lot of fear that the kids are feeling these days.
So just real quick, Joey, are your children all doing it virtually with?
Yes.
Okay. So your school made the decision not to go back into the building.
Correct. Yeah. We may go back at some point, but not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Thank you. And I see that Paris would like to respond. Paris.
So I think my biggest thing returning to school is just the fact that people often don't realize that teachers are human too, and teachers are people. And just as we're addressing the hierarchy, the tower of needs, teachers we have those basic needs as well. So I think that has been my biggest thing during this time, just caring for my students and my families, but also finding time to care for myself and wanting others to understand that teachers are going through this as well. And this is something that is brand new for teachers. Teachers have never had to really teach online, especially to younger students like kindergarten students. You're expecting them to sit in front of an iPad all day or whatever the device may be. But the teachers have feelings as well, and teachers, they understand that this is not ideal for students. This is not the traditional way that school has been done, but due to what's going on in our world, we just have to make the adjustments. So I think the teachers are the ones that are being forced to easily make the adjustments, but are oftentimes being forgotten that we're human as well, and we need a moment to step back from things and breathe.
Thank you. Thank you. Just out of curiosity, I wonder if you have any story of how the children are showing up for you that stands out for you, or was a moment that was like an aha moment for you with the kindergartners?
I think my situation may be different just because I'm a teacher that goes above and beyond. So I've made sure that my students, they know how to log into the Google Meet before time. So I can say that like pretty much like about 90% of my class has been on my Google Meet call, and that is a big thing for 5-year-olds to do because they're the high schoolers that aren't logging into their Google Meet call. So I think that's probably been my biggest win, just knowing that there's almost a 100% attendance rate for my calls, and just knowing that they're engaged and they are trying, and it's not one of those things to where I walk away from it at the end of the day and I'm like, wow, I don't think I can do this. Like, I'm trying and they're trying, so we're making it work together. But I set that culture for my classroom. I let them know in the beginning that this is something new for your teacher, and it's new for your parents, it's new for you all. So we have to work through this together. And I think if there are more teachers that have an attitude of we need to work through this together, then that's when we finally start working through this together, and it becomes a partnership with students, parents, the school, and the community as a whole.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I just visualize I have a 3.5-year-old great granddaughter, and thinking, I mean, she's pretty techie, which is shocking to me, but trying to imagine her going to school and having to actually be learning a specific thing sort of sounds impossible to me. So thank you for sharing that with us.
You know, Elaine, I just want to just commend you, Paris, for being able to get your students online in that environment. I know a lot of families are challenged with technology issues, parents who have not been educated around using technology and computers and the software, and then of course the challenges of even not even having the proper tools that they need, computers and iPads and those kinds of things. So you definitely should be commended for that. I'm curious about how you're able to institute some of the creative things that are needed in a kindergarten classroom in order to teach little people. So have you found that you have to adjust much of what you do in order to reach your students?
I think to some degree I've had to adjust things, but more so I've always believed that proper planning just helps your performance. So when I do my planning, there's always a moment where I make sure that kindergarten has the same items as me. So in my preparation period, I did go out of my way to make sure that like all of my students had everything that they need. So I made the copies, I made bags for them, I dropped them off to their homes. And when we're on the call, there's a binder everybody brings to class every single day. The binder has folders in there that are color coordinated. So I'm the teacher that's maybe a little small dose of OCD maybe within me, but it just helps our classroom move forward. And I think just knowing that those small things are important to our classroom, the students automatically know that their writing folder is their yellow folder. So all of their stuff for I print off things maybe like 2 weeks at a time. So it says week 1 on there, and really, it's rewarding because you see the students on the camera and they're navigating their learning, and they're finding things within their folder, and they're finding things within their bag, and they may have manipulatives in their bag, in their math bag, but as you hear me talking, these are things that I have done just to offset my classroom to ensure that my students have the best learning experience possible. And that may not be the same case in every classroom, which is the downfall that I think we may be suffering during this time, because people they're tired when they leave. And some days I am tired, but I do know that it ultimately will benefit my classroom in the long run. So I'm okay with putting in the work on the front end just to make sure that my students are successful, first grade ready by the time they leave kindergarten.
Thank you. Thank you. That's pretty inspiring, I think.
To that question.
Sure.
Okay. Well, you guys just made me think of this as you were talking about, that Maslow's hierarchy of needs and that social emotional support that our kids need. Well, when I ran for the school board, it was to change the culture, because I recognized that my kids were going to get the best experience if our teachers were supported and our teachers were getting the best experience.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed talking to some of our teachers during this time is that, a lot of them want to be in the classroom. They want to be with their kids. They want to be hugging their kids and doing, and having that experience. That's why they went into teaching, is so that they could be that support and they could build those relationships and watch the progress. And it's so much more difficult now for our teachers to do that. And a lot of them feel like they're missing something through this virtual experience. But as a parent, I'll talk to my son and I'll say, well, what do you think of your teacher? I love her so much. She is the best. And I'm like, well, did you know her before? No, and so, and so I'll tell the teacher that then. I'll make sure that they know and get that feedback from my child that they are impactful and they are making a difference in our children's life. And I know this isn't ideal, but they're still having that experience. And that is so important as school leaders and as parents, that we're giving our teachers that feedback. Yeah. And if there are issues, then we try to work that out, because I know that the intention of our teachers is to have that relationship.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I'm grateful for dedicated teachers like Paris and Jeff, who are going the extra mile to try and reach the kids during this time. So as school restarted this fall, I wondered, I know there was some discussions on, well, I know there are big discussions at the Board of Education about whether to start or not start, whether we're doing it virtual or not. And if we do it virtual, we are in the building, what do we do then? So, and as teachers or parents, while you had some feedback at what the decision was, I'm just curious to know, as school started this fall, what is the resentment you held that no one knows about regarding the start? Anyone feeling a little brave?
Everyone knows about my resentment.
Okay. Joey, you raised your hand there attentively, I think.
Yeah, we are so busy. The parents are so overwhelmed right now. My older ones, frankly, they're handling a lot of it on their own, and I am floored. Like, probably my fourth grader and up, they really have this under control. But those little ones, if you're not sitting just off camera, suddenly they walk away, or they decide they need to go get, a 4-course meal to have in front of them. So we're managing a lot, and especially with a big family, having, multiple kids in different rooms. School is the only thing I have done for the last 2 weeks. The floors are not getting swept. The bathrooms are not getting cleaned. The dog is not going for his walks. This is it. This is all we have time for. And it's a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else have anything they would like to share about what it's been like for them to go back? Michelle.
Oh, Benita first.
Oh,
Okay, I unmuted. So I had to think about that question. I thought that resentment was a really, really strong word. So the only thing that I could think of was, I feel as if everybody is feeling the same thing, just overwhelmed with what you have to do. at first, I just felt shocked at the number of things that really need to be focused in on or worked on. But I think everybody's feeling the same thing. Just the amount of activities that will go undone because there's just no time for it. And I know family members who, have children and are working from home and trying to teach school. And how do they get it all done? There's just no way that you can. It's just really, you do what you can, and what you cannot do, you just let it go. So I have a 5-year-old, and I'm teaching from home. And I'll share more about that later, but we get up, we start early, and the things that we can do, we do them. And the things that we can't, we try to make it a lesson so that you can get the things done that are important. But resentment, I just think that everybody's going through the same type of feeling with it's just so much, and what really needs to be done first. Prioritizing your time, I think, is what it is.
Right. Yeah. You're for me, you're sort of triggering old memories in that I was a single parent with 3 kids for 8 years. And so working a full-time job, getting them to and from school, making sure they're fed, making sure the laundry's done, like, oh, I can't delay, I have to get the laundry done now because there won't be time tomorrow, kind of thing. And so I'm having flashbacks to those days and how hard it was, and you're just constantly running. So thank you. Well, I wonder if I'd phrase the question, what are your doubts and reservations about going back to school?
Well, I think Michelle still wanted to answer that.
Sure.
Question.
Yeah, I'll be happy to talk about my resentment. And I understand that it is a strong word, but being in a role on the Board of Education, I love our kids in the district. I really seriously love our kids. We have 6,400 children that we're responsible for. And when this started, we were focusing on feeding our kids. And then we're focusing, and meeting those daily needs, those social and emotional needs. School boards were looking for guidance from our governor, and we were looking for assistance from our state representatives and our state senators. We were looking for assistance from our federal government. And we've seen them playing a lot of politics and going on vacations and all of these delays in legislation. And all these things are happening while we're on the front lines experiencing this pandemic. We're experiencing our kids that don't have, that we're trying to feed. And then we want to implement these new education plans with very little guidance. And when the guidance comes, it's so late that we've already had to put plans in place. And we've been learning now that we can't depend on our state and our federal governments as we're going through this, that we're really on our own. And we started that way anyway, really, where we wanted to consider everything we could consider. We have to think about parents who can't go to work right now because they have to be home to support their kids. If we had the assistance from the state, that's not a school board issue. Public health issues are not school board issues. Those are statewide issues, and those are federal government issues. So I think that we're all doing the best we can as parents, as teachers, as administrators, as school board members, but there's something very big that's missing from this equation right now. And that's where my resentment is. And to see my current state representative, in Gettysburg talking about not wanting to wear her mask and not wanting her temperature checks, and that's fine that she's talking about, it's not fine that she's talking about those things, but she's talking about those things. and she's not talking about anything that's important to the people that are here. And it's a heavy lift for our communities right now, for our school boards and our local government and our parents. and we need the help. And that's where my resentment is that we don't have it. And so we're making do with what we have. We all are making do with what we have. And a lot of people don't recognize that it could be better, that resource allocation is not happening very well right now. It's not coordinated. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for saying that. I actually, I couldn't help but notice as we sat here, being a parent who has a kid off at college, and being very nervous about my child slash young adult being off in school where COVID is still spreading. And because our legislators have said that if schools did not have in-person sessions, that they would lose their funding. That was a tremendous concern for me, because even in the case where I'd like to have kept my kid here at home, and I have the privilege of being a business owner and, you know, the ability to have had her here, even if she was an elementary school or a high school child. But there are a lot of parents who don't have that privilege, whose kids are in school and attending classes in person. And I know every day as a parent of a young adult, I'm terrified that something's going to happen to my kid. And I can only imagine the fear of parents whose kids are not able to learn virtually. And I noticed that their voices are missing from this conversation. Parents who have to go to work, those people who are deemed essential workers. You know, I consider teachers essential workers, and that gives me a little bit of hope right now that people will begin to appreciate the work that teachers do every day. But even moreover, many teachers are having to put their very lives on the line to do their jobs, much like our healthcare workers right now. But likewise, many families are having to take the risk of sending their kids to school because they don't have options. And so I appreciate what Michelle is saying, because oftentimes, even in policy, those parents are left out of the equation. What do parents do when daycares close and when schools close? And, and policymakers don't often consider those voices. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation, but I want people to be mindful of the fact that not everybody is part of this conversation. Right. And those people who aren't, their voices have to be considered as well, and taken into consideration where policy is concerned. So I am especially happy to know that Michelle is running as a legislator here in Ohio, and that she's thinking about those voices that aren't included. I likewise am heartened by the idea that even as a single parent, if I had been put in the position, I would not have had options. I would have, been distraught at the idea that my kids were going to be out of school and there's nobody there to care for them. And, even learning virtually, they may have been at home by themselves learning virtually. So those are the things that I think about. Those are the crossroads that I think that I face in walking this road of wanting to represent people and knowing that some voices aren't heard. I think Jeffrey wants to say something.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, I'll be very brief, but Dr. Enoch and Ms. Novak, your candidacies were new to me this morning, but you have a new fan. Thank you very much for what you said, and it was very much what was in my head. The reason why I gave up 90 minutes of my Saturday was to specifically represent the students and the families that I feel responsible for. And these kids come from the roughest neighborhoods and have the roughest demographics. And the truth of the matter is that they are being left behind, despite my best efforts, my colleagues' best efforts, and my school board's best efforts, which Michelle correctly pointed out. Yeah, there's inequity. And if you look at our society, and I'm sorry, I'm going to try to get through this without swearing. That's my Achilles heel, and I'm going to do my very, very best. And it's very hard not to use profanity when you look at the situation. It's very hard to look at our society and not be mad. How can you look at what's going on outside our window and see all the empty promises, all the Black Lives Matter signs and everything else, yet as we started the school year, my kids are being left behind. They have patchy internet connection. There's no childcare support, so a lot of my students are doing double duty where they're trying to log into my history class while babysitting at the same time. And quite frankly, it's just not good enough. As a society, we've let them down on every possible conceivable level. And it makes me exceptionally upset. It makes me mad enough to give up my Saturday afternoon to come in here to try to support candidates like this who are going in the right direction. And I'm going to stop there before I just completely lose it, because it really is just that upsetting.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Yeah. We're living through a perfect storm, I think, of everything that is broken and has been broken for a while. We can't hide it anymore. We can't ignore it anymore. It's out there, and so hearing some of the stories of what parents are dealing with, what teachers are dealing with, and even thinking of my granddaughter and when the COVID. She has a 3.5-year-old who was in daycare, and suddenly she couldn't take her to daycare for a while. Now she's back in daycare, but they have a whole system, and I like the schools public schools whose funding has been cut. The daycare centers aren't allowed to max out their enrollment, so I don't know how they're surviving financially, these small businesses, as it relates to that, and the whole system and processes. So my granddaughter takes her daughter. Somebody comes to the door, takes the 3-year-old, and then she calls when she's in the parking lot, and they bring the child to her, so that the parents are never entering the building, and the fewer kids are there. And it is that whole kind of thing that's going on that we've never dreamt that we would have to be dealing with at this time.
Elaine, let me say this as well, because you brought something up that just was in the news yesterday. There was a news article yesterday that reminded people that children can carry this virus and not have symptoms.
Right.
And, I think that we've paid attention to all of the stories about how young people are able to fight it off better, and how certain demographics are less susceptible. But I think it's important to keep in mind that children also can carry this virus. And, it's almost like playing Russian roulette. Which kid, do we think is expendable enough that we would put the gun to their head and say, okay, it's okay for this child, to die. So I think that as we're having this conversation, and as we're thinking about the needs of the community going forward, that we have to make sure that those voices, again, that are not part of this conversation, that we keep them in mind. And even the vitality and the health of a teacher, because a child coming from a household where somebody might be infected could walk into that classroom and essentially take that teacher's life. And such was the case with the 28-year-old teacher here just the past week or so, who died of COVID-19, carried in the classroom, I'm sure, by a child that she taught. And so again, also another vulnerability. Right.
Yeah, all of that. And it's changed everything, because I was watching her one day a week, that 3-year-old, and I haven't since March. And so in her lifetime, she's 3.5 now, to have not been with us for 6 months, that's a lifetime for her. So it's changed how our relationship is, even though we see her from the distant, like we'll go drive by her that kind of thing. And I think, we're not the only ones. And just multiply it by thousands of us that have changed how we're interacting with friends and family now, and that loss that we experience. Having said all this, I'm a rather optimistic person, and so I always wonder in the midst of things that to look for the light, the bright spots, and I would just be curious to know that if any of you have experienced something positive during this time, since March, during this time of COVID, what has been a gift to you about this time? I know what gift I've received, but I'm just curious if any of you have received a gift because of this time and the changes that we've had to make in our lifestyles. And anyone like to respond to that question?
I see Adelaide's hand is up.
Sure.
So I feel like during this time, I've been able to work on my own schedule. I do really like that, especially with school. I've just been given my time to do what I need to do. And it's not like you have this 45-minute period to get this done. I can work on my own schedule, and even if I need to, I can do stuff before school or after school, like based on the timing, I can do that. I do really like working on my own schedule though, because it gives me more freedom to just explore how I do my work.
So Adelaide, I'm curious, so what does it look like, a day of school look like for you?
So it varies depending on the day. I mean, I have a day a week where I just don't have school. I mean, like the teachers have like a sort of office hours thing. But normally I'll wake up, I'll get breakfast, get ready for the day. And I'll just sit down at my desk with my computer. I'll like check Schoology, which is the program my school is using, my district. And I'll check to make sure everything's done, all the homework for the day is done. They'll go to my first class. I have 2 classes, and then I have a lunch, and then 2 more classes. And then after that, I'm really free to either do homework or just free for the day. I'm done at around 3 p.m. every day. And I start at around 8 o'clock most days.
So how long do your classes last, each one?
About 90 minutes each.
Oh, so they're extended instead of the usual 45, you have 90 minutes. And so
they cut up my days so that half my classes are on one day, half my classes are on the other day, and then it's just like repeats after Wednesday, which is my off day.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Anyone else have any thoughts on something positive that they've appreciated? Michelle, I see you opened your mic. Did you want to share?
Yeah. Something positive that I've seen is the advocacy in the community, and it's a lot of student advocacy. Students recognizing that their voice matters and their experience matters, and feeling empowered then to be heard. And then, the parents, the community in general. I mean, a lot of people have become more aware of what their elected representatives are doing, what their roles are, and what the issues are that are impacting their families. And I think that's really important, because I think that there hasn't been a lot of awareness for a long time in our communities. And I'm happy to see that. And I also am glad that I'm in a position right now that I am running for office, because every day I have those resentments. And if I didn't have some channel for making change right now, I would be like a million times more frustrated than I am. So it gives me hope that we can have some changes, that we can change direction, we can be doing something different. Right. And, and to have Dr. Enoch in the role that she's in right now as a candidate, and there's a lot of other candidates. And then also, we've had school board elections that have been completely uncontested. I don't think we're going to have that happen again. Nice. I think people know what their school boards do now. They know what their city council does now. And they know that impact. So I hope to see a lot more people stepping up and running for office. And when they do that, I hope to see the community supporting them.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Jeff. Can you unmic yourself, Jeff? There
So,
you go.
sure. So I have one that was unexpected, that we didn't kind of see coming. That's interesting. And I'll try to see how I can word this to put it in the most fair way. So I was a substitute teacher for quite a while. In Adelaide, I've been to Walnut Hills, and I subbed there before you. It's a gorgeous school. And I've subbed in most of the schools across Western Hamilton County. And by comparison, my school is, well, difficult. Okay, so the one way to word it is that every single problem in society is kind of brought up onto our floor. Yeah, and it's not our kids' fault. It's not even their family's fault. It's just kind of the way things shook out for us. And we spend a lot of time dealing with behavioral management issues in class. And you see me smiling. I love my kids, and I'm in the right place. And I was kind of born to do what I'm doing, and to kind of help them make this transition to high school and hopefully living their best lives. But it's difficult teaching in my class, getting quiet and getting cell phones away and getting kids in chairs and not running amok, and generally speaking, right? Well, we found out when we went virtually that all the kids are instantly on mute, and they're all silent, and it's all just speaking like this, and I'm not interrupted, and I can speak like this for 30 minutes and say my piece and then be done. Thank you very much. Some teachers have found it tough because you're talking to a void, right? But Elaine mentioned I have a background as a saxophone player. I play concerts where you can't see the audience before. It ain't that big a thing. You just got to kind of hope you're making connection and hope that the jokes are kind of working, right? Like I see Benita laughing now. You could do this virtually, and it means that you could talk without having to throw kids out or like stop kids from. It's awesome. So in that sense, it's superb. Which leads me to my revelation, my kind of conclusion. For some of my kids, it's the very first time that they experience that in the classroom, where they experience a classroom that's free of interruption, where the teacher can just concentrate on the sound of the teacher's voice and receiving instruction, as opposed to the periphery, funs and games that we have in some of our schools, right? So that was kind of a cool thing to discover.
Thank you. Thank you. I like that. As Benita was doing. Isn't she really sad?
I was in a Montessori school, so I'm familiar with the whole snapping thing. It makes
Oh, well, that's the beatnik thing, the poetry and the reading and music. That's what we do. I'm showing my age.
Well, we still do it, Elaine.
Okay.
So you're not showing your age.
So thank you. Thank you.
Elaine, I'd like to share a gift for me. A gift for me has been the appreciation that people have had to share and express surrounding the work of people who have not been appreciated in the past. People have had to appreciate the grocery store workers and the laborers and the people who make the products and the goods that we use every day. People have had to appreciate teachers and medical professionals and people who don't often get our appreciation we've had to pay attention, right? Because these are the people who have kept our economy going, and that's been a gift to me, because those are the people that I've been fighting for years. Those are the voices that I've been trying to represent as an advocate and an activist in the community. And so it feels good to finally see that people are acknowledging those struggles. It feels good to see that where I've been advocating for technology in rural communities and inner cities where people didn't have access to technology, it feels good to see that technology is being prioritized so that those students can learn. Because after COVID-19 is over, all of our children will have had to access technology. All of our families will have had to be privy to these social norms that they have been isolated from for so long.
Right.
So that's been a gift to me. It's been a gift just to see those changes.
Yeah, thank you. Paris, you were on mic. Did you have something you wanted to add?
I'll just add that I think my biggest gift during this time is finding new ways to form relationships, not even just with my students, but with family members and with friends. My family is actually in Chicago. So I was a little hesitant to go see them in the summer, and wanting to see your grandparents, other sorts like that, just being mindful, but also in turn with my students and my families being mindful. And the students, they automatically want to hug you, and even if it's your past students, they want to hug you, and you're finding new ways to just give like air hugs, or you're giving an elbow or whatever it may be. The meaning is still there, but just different ways to show that same amount of love. And that actually made me think of one thing. You asked me if there was something that was like that I can remember from the week. And one thing that I remember is that at the end of our calls, normally we just wave to each other, or they'll say like, I see you tomorrow, and they'll say whatever their friend's name is. But in this past week, they've gotten in the camera and they've been doing this to me. And it warmed my heart the very first time that they did it, because granted, maybe one student saw another student do it, so now the whole class is doing it. But now that's like the social norm in our classroom. When we leave the call, there's like an ounce of love there, and you see 5-year-olds doing it. So it choked me up the first time, because we're on the camera, and I do feel so far away from them, and it makes me feel some type of way. I do almost feel like a little teary-eyed, just because they're asking, Miss Morgan, when can we come in the classroom with you? Or when can I come with you? Because they see me teaching from the classroom, so they want to be there. They want to know what it's like to be in school for the first time, and to learn all these new things that I'm telling them that we're going to learn, but just in a different manner. And I think becoming okay with that has been my biggest thing with 5-year-olds, because I just want them there with me.
Yeah. Thank you. I will say, for me, one of the gifts has been to see people more civically engaged during this time. Whether that is being interested, as Michelle said, in what the Board of Education is doing, and maybe they're going to run and not just, let whoever runs take the office kind of thing. But the level of civic engagement has gone up, and that really is an important value for me, because I think we've become complacent, that we elected them to take care of it, or we could pay somebody else to do it. We pay the teacher to take care of the kid. We pay the elected person to handle these issues for us, and realizing that all power is local, and for us to be using our voices and showing up and showing what's important to us, and that's what our elected officials need to hear from us. And I'm really grateful that I see that happening more and more, and I hope it continues. I hope it doesn't fade away after we return to post-COVID. With that said, I'm trying to keep us on track. As we're moving to the close, I just also would like to invite you to reflect on the conversations that we've had, and I wonder if there's anything that has been left unsaid that someone would like to share at this time. And the other would be, as you reflect on the conversations that we just had, notice, I'd ask you what struck you, or maybe what surprised you about today's conversations. Maybe something you're going to take with you when you leave here. So again, it's just about noticing what happened. Because I feel like, for me, it's been a real gift to get to know all of you better, and to know that each of you is like a point of light for me now in the work that you're doing in this world, and how important that is. So I'm opening it up to you all, and wonder, as you reflect on what you've heard today from different people.
Thank you, Elaine. I just want to echo what everyone has said. There is something good that happened even through the chaos. And if everyone would take something positive from it, I think that starts to enrich a person's mental health. Mm-hmm. And then outwardly, it expands to those who they are connected to. Something Dr. Enoch said specifically in the relationships and the way that technology is being used now is truly important, because we've talked about teaching our children how to globally connect with people, how to build relationships. These are just things that children are expected to learn in school. But now everyone is getting involved, from be it their family members, be it their school teachers, be it those who are in political arenas. And there's just a huge expansion of how everyone really is connected to each other. And I think until we really realize that we are connected and not leave out individuals who are supposedly less than others, people who, as Dr. Enoch has said before, not a part of the conversation here today, but their voices need to be heard.
Yes.
We have to continue to think about people in general. Maybe your life is not what another person is going through or what they're dealing with. We haven't talked about the number of people who've had to be consoled because they're grieving.
Right.
You know, that's a whole nother issue.
Right.
We haven't spoken about just the loss that people have had in regard to housing, their finances. Everything is interconnected. And I really believe if we will think about how each one of us can reach one other person, teach another person, care for another person, do something for another person, then it's going to make it a much better world. And I believe it's starting. I really believe it's starting right now.
Thank you.
Thank you for just allowing me to share that. And I have really enjoyed the conversation that I have heard, that I think if we go out and have more of these conversations, we are going to change the world, and things are not going to be the same. The things that the young people have done as far as the peaceful protest, I commend them. And these are just things that teachers have taught in school. Some children have learned at home, and some children have seen based on them YouTubing and watching history unfold. So Dr. Enoch, Michelle, Novak, you're going to be able to really impact our communities. And I'm so glad that you're representing. And as been said also is that people are going to take notice in these civic political positions and do something to make change. I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Anything that struck you about today's conversations or maybe surprised you in what you heard or what the experience was like for you?
Just something that I want to make sure that people take away from this is not to belittle their own voices, that everybody's voice can make a difference, and it doesn't matter who you are and who you're, who's representing you, or on school board, or even your teacher, in the classroom. Just your experience makes a difference, and it matters. And I can't begin to know what everybody's experience is, and sometimes I have my blinders on. when I'm making decisions. So, and I'll try to reach out to the community, but I also need the community to reach out to me and other people who are in positions to make decisions right now. I think the best way to do that for most people is through email, and not on social media, because sometimes things on social media get out of control, and people are mouthing off, and there's that. Write a sincere letter to somebody, tell them what you're going through, what your experience is, and advocate for yourself, advocate for your children, advocate for your classroom. Send a letter, and most elected officials, their email addresses are on the websites for whatever organization that they represent or that they're a part of.
Thank you. Thank you. I know I always think of, as I said before, that there's always a gift kind of thing, but I think also there's a possibility of rethinking education and what are you learning in this time about how education has been delivered now versus how it's normally delivered, and what is the mission, the real goal of providing our children education, and are we achieving that? And maybe we need to rethink how we do all those things and open up the space for that. But again, is there anyone who has anything else to add? Or if not, I'll turn it over to Dr. Enoch. Oh, Jeff?
Yeah, well, I just want to second what Benita said. She basically summarized the whole point of my 8th grade history class, and that's that we're all connected. So we begin looking at the Native Americans and their story of genocide and mistreatment. Then we swiftly move on to the transatlantic slave trade, where the story doesn't get any better, to be frank. And then we carry on. But the overall point of the story is that we are all connected. That is the true lesson to be learned from all of it. Secondly, I didn't want to leave the conversation without making my point of view just very, very crystal clear. I am the only white cisgender male on the call. I'm healthy and employed to boot, and I've got an American passport, which means I am about the most privileged individual you could possibly meet. I'm almost 50 years old, and I'm looking out at the world around me, and I'm looking at my society, and I'm saying it's not good enough. We've tried it that way for millennia, and we need to do something different. What's the famous Einstein quote, with the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result? Well, we expect a different result. So we need to directly support candidates like Dr. Enoch and Ms. Novak through our actions and through our behavior and through our especially behavior at the ballot box. It's time for a change. And I wanted to leave you all with this kind of thought. As a history teacher, I think I'd be amiss not to. Pandemics are times of change throughout society. And believe, Juan, I actually have somebody trying to deliver a pizza to our high school is what's going on now. That's who just knocked on my door. Funny enough, but true. All right, so that's all right. I'm a professional teacher. We can handle these interruptions. That's all right. So if you look back throughout the history of humanity, when we've had global pandemics like this, they have been the predecessors of serious change. It was instrumental in the fall of Rome because there was a pandemic that sickened the Roman army that helped get them weak for the Visigoths. It was the downfall of the feudal system and the whole change in the economic system because, quite frankly, just so many peasants died of bubonic plague that the ones that remained were able to argue for some basic employee rights. Yeah, so that's partly how we ended up with the end of feudalism. So the points that Ms. Mudd were making about that we are on the cusp of change and that the time is now, that is this Generation Z has got it. They got access to the internet and they understand it and they're acting upon it. I believe is completely correct. I believe that the police in Minneapolis chose exactly the wrong time in history to stand on George Floyd's neck and to have it recorded. And I do believe that this could be a time where we actually make real, substantial, fundamental change that will last.
Yay. I couldn't agree with you more. Hearts. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that.
Thank you.
And I will add this to that My friend Peter said, every time I walk through the door, the future walks in with me. And so it has put on me that I need to exercise my personal agency. And when I walk in the room, I want to model the world that I want to live in right now. And in doing that, I have discovered I can shift the room. And each of us can do that. And the first time I did it, asked for what I wanted, told them what I wanted, and they said, okay, and they did it. I was stunned, and then they all thanked me. And so I think all of us have that power to create the future right now. We're not waiting 20 years. I don't want to wait for Gen X. I want to be right there with them, helping them and supporting whatever they want for their future, because I'm on the way out. So I want to leave it better for them. And I want it to be the world they want, not the one I wanted, the one they want. So, all right, Dr. Vanessa, you want to take the close for us and do any Q&A out there for us?
You know, before I wrap up, I did want to see if anyone in our audience, we have people on the chat today. If anyone in the audience had anything that they wanted to add to the conversation, any questions, I believe you have the capability to raise your hand virtually. If you click the 3 dots in the top right corner, you should be able to see the hands raised. So if anyone in the audience has anything they want to add, you can go ahead and do that now. Okay, I don't see any hands there yet, but let me just check and make sure there are no hands raised on social media and no one is asking any questions there. Make sure there are no hands. Sorry. Okay. So I don't see any questions on there as well. Wonderful. So let me, before I close, I'd like to give Michelle Novak an opportunity to say some closing words first. And then after she closes, then she can turn it back over to me and I can close.
Thank you. Again, it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Definitely, I have grown closer to all of you through this conversation, and I hope to keep the conversations going. Now, if anybody would like to support my campaign, there's many ways you can do that, and I believe everybody has their own capabilities, whether it's just liking my Facebook page and sharing my posts, sharing information, getting a yard sign, or if you can volunteer, if you have time to volunteer, and if you have resources that you can contribute. All of those things help in different ways, and a campaign is like starting your own business, and there's a lot of pieces to it that you need, lots of roles, and a lot that needs to be done. So any way that people can support, also, you know, just say a prayer for us, because that's what's been fueling this whole campaign. And the prayers are much appreciated. We need it. We have a lot of challenges ahead of us, but I'm optimistic. I've seen so many people step up in our community. I've seen people come together, and I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic that, you know, that we're going to have the changes that we need. And sometimes we just have to go through those difficult times for the big changes to happen that we want to see. So thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Michelle, for being here. It is an awesome pleasure to have you here as someone who wants to represent us at the state level. I also want to say thank you to all of our guests. Thank you so much, Paris, for being an awesome kindergarten teacher. You know, I was thinking about, as Paris was talking, her kindergartners may never have known any other way to be educated. And so, you know, this is an experience for them that's new, but it different than the rest of our students are learning. And so Paris, being the awesome teacher that she is, has found a way to engage kindergartners in a virtual environment. You know, how about that? And I want to say thank you so much for Adelaide and your willingness to make your voice heard. I want to continue to encourage you to speak up and speak out. You have a very important voice. You have a strong voice. And it's very refreshing, Joey, to see such a wonderful young person. And, you know, I know our future's bright because of people like Adelaide. You know, I'm sitting here thinking, you know, it's just amazing. Joey, you're a super mom. You've got lots of little people over there that you're raising. And I just can't even imagine, you know, what it would be like to educate all of the little people and, you know, and to keep everything sorted out and all of their schedules, you know, in order. And you've got to be a teacher to every one of them. And, you know, I just want to commend you on all that you do as a mom. And Benita, thank you so much. You know, you didn't share all of your accolades. I'm glad you shared, you know, some of what you do, and, you know, your wonderful son that you're raising over there. And he's also very intelligent. He went out canvassing with us before we knew there was a pandemic. And he was so special, so sweet, and very intelligent. And he was even able to tell us why it was he felt it was important to be out there canvassing. And I just thought, this is amazing. This kid is amazing. You know, you bring such hope. And Jeffrey, you know, I wish that you were my history teacher when I was in school. You know, I you know, just the idea of having a teacher who is not afraid or inhibited in sharing the truth about our history as a nation, you know, until we're able to embrace that truth, you know, we'll never be the country that we can really fully be until we can appreciate everybody in this nation and what we all brought to the history and to, you know, what we'll all bring to the future. And I want to give the biggest shout out today to Elaine Hansen, who is, you know, who put this together and was able to coordinate this discussion. Elaine does a wonderful job for us as part of our campaign. And Elaine said to me, we have to do a part 2, even before we did a part 1, because it's important to Elaine that we understand that education is changing, and we have to embrace that change, and we have to look at other models. We all want a good education, but we've got to be able to appreciate what those other models bring to the table. Public education is important to me. And when Elaine came to me and said, let's have a conversation with these other schools, I said, make it make sense to me, Elaine. And she did. She did. She absolutely made it make sense. That we have to be willing to listen to those voices of people who aren't often invited to the conversation. We are in our own little silos, and we don't listen enough to one another. And that's why you all are here today. It's not just about me talking. In fact, you know, I try to do as little talking, but every now and then, I get passionate about something and it just comes out. But I try to do as little talking as I can in these forums, because I want to hear from you. I want to hear from the people that I'm asking to represent. Because unless I know what your needs are, unless I hear your voice, I can't represent you in Congress. You know, over 51% of the people who represent us in Congress are millionaires, yet less than 95% of us are millionaires in this country. And oftentimes when they go to Congress, they forget about the people that they went there to serve, and they don't understand the people that they're saying that they're serving. You can't serve a people that you don't understand. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you. When I go to Congress, my goal is to have policy circles, much like the one we're having here now, where people lend their voice to what that policy is going to become, where you have the opportunity to tell your representative what it is that you need for them to advocate for. And so I want to be the representative who can truly represent you in Congress. So I appreciate and thank you so much for this conversation. Like Michelle, I want to invite you to go to my website, and that's enochforcongress.com. Donate to my campaign. You can volunteer. You can volunteer for my campaign from any planet. Well, no, I'm sorry. You have to be a U.S. citizen to donate, and you can be anywhere on U.S. soil and volunteer for the campaign. So I do want to invite you to get involved. We have volunteer meetings every Tuesday night where people come together. All of our volunteers come together, and we offer our big ideas, and we talk about what we're doing, and garner everybody's ability to get involved. And I see Michelle put her website on the screen. It's www.michelleenovac.com. So again, thank you again for being here. And I hope that everybody who is out there listening to this conversation has learned something today. And I will turn it back over to Elaine to say bye-bye.
So yeah, I'm just so grateful that you all accepted the invitation to be on today's call, and that you've engaged in the conversations and the questions that I've presented to you. And I just wonder if I wanted to give Adelaide another chance if there was anything she wanted to add or that surprised her about the conversations. If not, you can pass.
Do you mind if I say something that I just feel like has gone unheard?
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Say that.
So obviously going to a new school is obviously all the time, it's very hard. And I have my friends from my old school, but it has been hard for me, and I'm sure everybody else, to make new friends and advance socially, because we haven't gotten that chance to speak or connect with our peers. And that I feel like is important to me, that everybody is getting the chance to socialize yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No.
Elaine, can you remind everybody, by the way, what our next town hall is? And do you remember?
Well, I haven't. The only one that the next one is in October with the young people for Enoch.
Oh, okay, but we're working.
But I haven't landed the date yet and set everyone up. But we're going to do a part 2 on the education, where I want people to come and share different ways of teaching and presenting education. Jeff and I already had a bit of a conversation on it, but there are lots of people out there doing not really interesting and innovative things that I think that will speak to the 21st century children that they're teaching and inspire them to do something different with that. So you'll hear more about that, and I'll try and get it settled within the next week, maybe by next Saturday. We'll see, because sometimes everything falls into place nicely. And yeah, so that one's the next one, and there's another one that's percolating that I'll see how fast I can pull it together.
Wonderful.
So, in the virtual world, you can put things together really fast because nobody has to travel.
All right, guys. Well, thanks so much, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of the afternoon.
Yeah, thank you.
And enjoy the rest of the school year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye. You all did good. It was great having you. Bye-bye.